Are we gonna do introductions on mic, or are we gonna go back to the room?
We're gonna do introductions on mic and then everyone's gonna leave.
Okay.
How are you? We got to see. I believe so.
Yeah, whichever one turns on, we
Okay, we got you right now over there, but when Shanna gets back in, let's talk about whether or not it makes sense to move you, because we had to be able to get the commissioner on the camera. We had to shift some things around, so the commissioner is gonna sit basically where.
So I think we're 5 foot anyway. If I sit back a little bit, we're good. Let's go back. Then we're 6 kilograms.
So Representative Sylvester, this is Laura Fortman.
Hi. Whoops. Hi, Commissioner. How are you?
I'm okay, trying to figure this out. So.
Okay. So yep. So you're going to join us remotely.
Yep.
Okay. Great.
And I'll just put myself on mute until you're ready.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So.
Okay. All right, we're going to move to
Shanna?
Are we actually just switching to cutting and cutting?
Yes, that would make a lot of sense.
Okay, I'll just do it right now, and I'll just throw it there.
Yeah, for going for business right now, and I'll just switch cutting.
Okay.
That's all right.
Commissioner just popped up.
Oh, great, perfect.
So she's
That's
going
fine.
to stay remote.
That's great.
I'll just put myself on mute until you're ready.
As a reminder, we're streaming right now. Everything is live, so you might want to mute your mics if you're not.
All right, how are you?
All right.
Yeah.
Ready? Oh, Mark is waiting to be let in, except he's waiting in the wrong meeting. To members of the public, we're just waiting for one senator to join us, and we'll be starting shortly.
Who's baskets on the ceiling that hang off?
I'm
Yes.
giving you the list.
We're going to be talking about systems. Commissioner Fortman will be giving a statement. The plan is systems issues, phones, online system, staffing, benefits, PUA, because I think a lot of people have questions about pandemic unemployment assistance.
Okay, I need to start again. So I was trying to like.
Sure.
What my kid said. So we've got
Sure. Systems, phones, staffing, the online system, benefits, and pandemic unemployment assistance, or the PUA for self-employed.
We missed communication,
Which is communications.
so.
systems, phone, staffing, online benefits, and
PUA, pandemic unemployment assistance.
And then communication
Communications,
and next steps.
and next steps. And we'll do anyone at any point could go back if there's something that we missed that gets generated, you know.
And then at the end, we'll kind of go anything else that wasn't in one of those, or if you wanted to go back, there will be a time to go back to phone, to go back if you heard something during online.
Okay.
after communications is one more.
And maybe, Madam Chair, you could announce the category before we.
Welcome to the Committee on Labor and Housing. I'm Senator Shenna Bellows. We're here for a special briefing on unemployment from Commissioner Fortman of the Maine Department of Labor. In accordance with the joint rules, we will open this meeting with introductions from our members, including those who are in this room for the quorum and those who are joining online. All 13 committee members of Labor and Housing are participating today. Following introductions, we will pause while committee members, except for the committee chairs and ranking members of the committee or leads, leave for separate rooms to join the committee remotely. We have some members with serious health conditions and others with vulnerable family members. For their safety and the safety of all, we are wearing face coverings in this room, but members joining from rooms where they are alone will not be, unless they choose to. The technology via Microsoft Teams will allow all committee members to see and hear everything that happens inside this room and one another as they are speaking. As a reminder, we will be following both the committee rules and the joint rules that this committee has observed from the very beginning of our work together. Members of the public are listening and watching live online. Thank you to the legislative technology team led by Nick Rendy, who has made this possible. We are also joined remotely by our committee analyst, Deirdre Schneider, who will be taking careful notes for follow-up from the committee to the Department of Labor. And we're grateful to her for organizing the committee logistics. The committee will be hearing first from Commissioner Fortman, who's joining us remotely with an introductory statement. We'll then be asking questions, and we're going to try to organize our questions in categories. But of course, any committee member can go back to a category or ask a follow-up question at any point. Those categories include questions about the system, systemic questions about unemployment, questions about phones, questions about staffing, questions about the online portal and system itself, questions about benefits, questions about pandemic unemployment assistance, or the PUA for the self-employed, questions about communications, and questions about next steps. Without further ado, we will begin all committee introductions, and I will start with Senator Guerin. We'll go around.
Good afternoon, Senator Stacey Guerin, Senate District 10.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Dick Bradstreet from House District 80. That's Vassalboro, Windsor, Somerville, and part of Augusta.
Good afternoon. I'm Lawrence Lockman from Bradley. I represent House District 137.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Joshua Morris. I represent House District 75, which is Turner, Leeds, and Livermore.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Carney. I represent House District 30, which is Cape Elizabeth.
And now I'm Representative Dean Rikerson from representing the people of Kittery, District Number 1. I'd like to thank all the state workers who are making a huge effort in this particular time.
Good afternoon. My name is Ralph Tucker. I'm a representative from Brunswick.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Sue Austin, and I'm reaching you from my home in Gray, and I represent portions of Raymond, Casco, and Olive Fry Island. And I would like to thank not only the other gentleman on IT, but Rick Price, who spent a great deal of time this morning getting me really engaged so I can be here with you. Thank you so much, and thank you, the Commissioner.
Thank you, Representative Austin. Representative Dorr, will you introduce yourself?
Thank you. Yes, I will. Hi, I'm Representative Donna Dorr. I represent District 85, which is a portion of Augusta. And I just want to give a shout out to all my committee members who are there today. Hello, everyone.
Senator Lawrence, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, Senator. I'm State Senator Mark Lawrence from Southern York County. I represent the towns of Kittery, Elliott, York, Ogunquit, South Berwick, and part of Berwick.
Senator Lawrence, your video is not on, so if you're able to place your video on, that might be helpful. But thank you and welcome.
Do that.
Good
Representative
afternoon.
Cuddy.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Scott Cuddy from House District 98, which is Winterport, Frankfort, Searsport, and Swanville.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Join us today for the Committee on
Senator Bellows, Representative Sylvester, I can't hear anything.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Neither can I. I can hear you. I can hear you.
I can hear you too.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear both of you. This is Representative Dorr.
Yeah, I've been trying to get in touch with them, that the audio has been muted since Representative Sylvester did his intro.
Exactly.
Okay. I thought I already said something wrong. No, I'm just kidding. Donna, that would make the quickest meeting ever we had, right?
I think it would be wonderful.
We don't usually cut off quite that quick.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Although here, it says that it's mute.
Because the meeting's being run by this one.
Yeah, that's what happened. Okay. Yes. But let's wait until everyone's reassembled. So forgive us, members of the public, we had a technical issue. This is a new world that we're living in. But we're going to pause 1 minute while our other members reassemble. Just as a reminder, this is still live right now. Members of the public are listening. We're just waiting 1 minute and then we'll get started. So, Commissioner, I think everyone is here. I think we're ready.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we
Well,
can,
good
we're
afternoon,
going to
Senator.
ping you on the screen. Well, 1 minute. I don't have that capacity on my computer. I don't have the capacity. It's not letting me do anything.
What are you not seeing?
I actually don't. I don't have that ability
What's that?
to pin her.
Oh, she. Pin? Oh, it does not.
I
Oh,
don't.
no, you can't. I can down there.
All right.
You.
Go ahead. Great. Commissioner, you are live and we can see you clearly from the screen. Welcome, Commissioner Fortman. Please introduce yourself and start with your opening statement. Thank you for
Great.
your patience.
Thank you. And good afternoon, Senator Bellows, Representative Sylvester, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing. My name is Laura Fortman, and I am the Commissioner of the Maine Department of Labor. I want to thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today. As we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic is having a profound effect on our state. Tens of thousands of Maine people have lost work and are grappling with how to pay bills, how to feed themselves and their families, how to afford their rents or mortgages, and how to stay safe and healthy. In the last 7 weeks alone, more than 110,000 Maine people have filed for unemployment insurance benefits. This is more than the number of people who filed in the past 3 years combined. Never have so many people sought unemployment insurance in such a short span of time. Many people who never thought they would have to rely on unemployment insurance, have been in touch with the department as a result of this terrible pandemic. But behind these extraordinary statistics are real people. They are our neighbors, our friends, our loved ones, people who are hurting and in need of our help. People such as Janet, who said to us, "My situation was quite complex. Like many Americans, I was furloughed from my position and therefore fearful that I would not be able to pay my bills or afford food. And this happened to me for the first time in my life. I needed help sorting through the unemployment details, and the person on the phone was extraordinarily kind-hearted. I took a great deal of her time and energy, but she vowed to help me. That kind of perseverance and exceptionalism is what makes our nation great. Or the call we received from the 84-year-old woman who said, "The old days of hardworking people working together is coming back, and it is just wonderful to see this during such a hard time." Or the young EMT who was quarantined due to COVID-19 exposure, who hadn't been working long enough to initially qualify for state unemployment. He was able to receive benefits after we reassessed his case using wages earned in the first quarter of 2020. These are just a snapshot of the more than 75,000 people who are now receiving unemployment insurance benefits. And I'll be able to announce a larger number tomorrow when the latest unemployment claims data is released. In total, more than $240 million has been distributed to these Maine people through the Department of Labor. It is an unprecedented amount. However, there are still thousands who are awaiting benefits. And that gap, in part, is due to understaffing and underfunding of the program, but it is also due to a change in who the workers are today and the fact that they are not covered by traditional unemployment insurance. Unemployment insurance was created in response to the Great Depression. It was designed to respond to job losses in the 1930s, when most people worked full-time for clearly defined employers. For 85 years, the unemployment system has fulfilled its role as partial wage replacement for workers who lost their job through no fault of their own and were able and available to work. It is an insurance program paid for by employers to help tide workers over between brief periods of unemployment. Unfortunately, many of our friends and neighbors who applied in the early weeks of the pandemic were not eligible for traditional unemployment assistance. They could not meet the monetary eligibility requirements, which are earnings of $5,100 in the last 5 calendar quarters and at least $1,700 in the previous 2 calendar quarters. And the requirement to be able to work, available to work, and actively seeking work was particularly difficult to understand during a pandemic. In 1937, a report by the Social Security Board in Washington, D.C. stated, and I'm quoting here, "Unemployment benefits guaranteed in advance, certain in amount, paid out of a fund built up by orderly and systemic means are clearly more businesslike than any form of haphazard relief hastily set up and financed in the midst of crisis." In spite of the lessons that we learned in 1937, the National Unemployment Insurance Program has not evolved or adapted to the changing economy. Congress was once again forced to hastily set up programs of relief in the midst of this crisis to meet the needs of self-employed, gig workers, new entrants to the labor force, as well as addressing the unique challenges of covering people impacted by the pandemic. Congress passed the CARES Act to help people like Catherine, a self-employed artist and photographer, and Whitney, a cosmetologist struggling to pay her booth fees while unable to work. This situation has been frustrating for everyone. Frustrating for those who can't get through to speak to us, frustrating for those who are waiting for their benefits, frustrating for my staff, and frustrating for me personally. I want you to know that I am committed to making sure that every Maine person who is eligible for these programs gets the benefits that they deserve. The scale and speed of the response to COVID-19 has no comparison. We have expedited thousands of state unemployment claims while concurrently launching new federal programs created by the CARES Act. It has been 7 weeks since the passage of Maine's emergency legislation, not quite 6 weeks since the passage of the Federal CARES Act and 3 days since the last issuance of federal operating instructions. Determining eligibility and providing benefits has always been a partnership between the states and the federal government. These new programs are no different. While we made some assumptions on how to deliver benefits under these programs, we had to wait for final instructions in order to complete the implementation. The Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation Program, FPUC, was the first to be implemented. Beginning April 16th, 12 days after operating instructions were made available by the federal government, the additional $600 per week was added to weekly unemployment benefits. 2 weeks later, on May 1st, we implemented the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, or PUA for short. This is the federal program created for people who are not typically eligible for state unemployment benefits, and this includes self-employed people. Maine was one of 13 states that rolled out PUA last week, and this is according to data from the U.S. Department of Labor. While 17 states preceded us in some form, 23 other states and territories have yet to implement PUA at all as of this past Monday. I know many people were waiting for PUA. When it launched on May 1st, the department processed over 3,000 claims in the first 4 hours, and then thousands more claims over the weekend. Actual numbers for the last week, as I mentioned before, will be released tomorrow. Given the many questions I've received about how these programs were implemented, I'd like to walk you through the events of the last 2 months. You will recall that on February 26th, I met with your committee for a supplemental budget hearing. I presented to you a new administrative funding plan for the unemployment insurance program. For the first time in the program's 85-year history, we were experiencing an administrative funding gap. Like many Department of Labor programs, unemployment insurance is countercyclical. When the economy is good, which it had been for a number of years, there is very little money to administer the program. The core federal grant funding, which covers administrative funding, it covers 100% of administrative funding, has been declining, and one-time grant opportunities had dried up. For the current program year, the department has received enough federal administrative funds to operate the program for 2/3 of the year. This was the ask that I came to you with. We had 13 claims representatives on staff. I would have preferred to have had more, but except for the winter months, it was adequate when the unemployment rate hovered around 3%. In response to the department's request, the legislature authorized access to one-time funds that had been distributed to the states through the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act of 2009, ARA for short, and approved a shift in a portion of employer unemployment taxes to go into a dedicated administrative fund. The one-time funds were intended to fill the operational hole that we were experiencing for the remainder of the program year. And in 2021, we would continue operations using the new administrative fund. The balance of the one-time fund was to be held in reserve for an emergency, and that emergency is here. I am thankful that the legislature authorized access to the ARA funds. That funding has allowed the department to ramp up and therefore help thousands of Maine people during this crisis. Just 18 days after we met the last time, COVID-19 hit Maine and a civil emergency was declared. The legislature and the governor moved quickly on emergency legislation. This included changes for the unemployment insurance program, including flexibility to the able and available requirement, waiving the 1-week waiting period, covering temporary leaves of absence, and halting charging employer experience rating for benefits paid. During that same week, we saw an unprecedented surge in the number of people filing for unemployment. 21,459 people filed a new claim for unemployment that week, up from 634 the prior week. The department immediately began moving staff from other areas of the department and across state government to address unemployment claims. Career Center staff had shifted solely to online services to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. Those staff were still assisting people with employment services, but demand had begun to decrease. The online chat service shifted to assisting unemployment claimants by walking through the claims process, answering questions about unemployment insurance, and resetting passwords for those who locked themselves out of their account. Some Career Center staff had already received very general unemployment training since they provided part-time unemployment services during the busy winter months. Those staff received a short, intensive training and were added to the 800 line. We were able to increase the number of people on the 800 line from 13 to 30. On Friday, March 27th, the Federal CARES Act was signed into law. It created 3 new unemployment programs. They are Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, or FPUC, which is the extra $600 that I mentioned before, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, or PUA, which I described a little bit earlier, and Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, or PEUC, which provides an additional 13 weeks of coverage. That same day, recognizing that added assistance was needed, the department began negotiating with a Maine-based contact center to quickly ramp up staffing for the unemployment 800 line. However, that was not quite as simple as signing a contract and allowing people to begin answering the phone lines. This meant agreeing on service delivery methods, deliverables and costs, working through technology needs, coordinating security checks, and perhaps most importantly, providing training to ensure that those answering our phones were able to help people. Our intent was to expand to 100 claims representatives. The following Monday, March 31st, the 800 line received 250,000 phone calls for the day, and we had over 1 million hits to our website. This staggering volume overwhelmed the state's communications network, which led to intermittent phone and network outages statewide. The department worked with Maine IT over the next 3 days to increase system capacity and reroute 800 lines to keep both the 800 line and the state network functioning. At the same time, we worked with Maine IT and our contractor on alternatives to telecommunications. We agreed to shift the hosting of the 800 line to our contractor while improvements continued to be made on the state network. This was a substantial pivot from our original plan, but our management team and subject matter experts worked through the issues. Both Maine IT and our contractor were invested partners and worked 24 hours a day to make this happen. In response to unprecedented call volumes, we also implemented an alphabetized call day. Starting April 6th, we asked people to call on certain days based on their last name. People whose last name began with letters A through H were asked to call on Mondays, I through Q on Tuesdays, and R through Z on Wednesdays. Thursdays and Fridays had no restrictions. This reduced call volumes to about 50,000 per day. While I know that many people were still not able to get through to someone, the alphabetizing did allow the state network and the 100 line to remain functional. And I thank Mainers for continuing to adhere to this schedule. That same week, we plan to implement the shift in hosting the 800 number and add the contracted staff as our tier 1 call center. Based on the training schedule, we targeted Friday, April 10th as the go live date. However, a massive spring snowstorm resulted in widespread power and network outages across the state. Many of our staff and the contractor staff were set up for telework. Many of them had no power. This continued into the weekend, preventing some from working claims over the weekend. At this point, 3 weeks into Maine's emergency declaration, USDOL released the first round of operating guidance for the 3 new programs created under the CARES Act. From USDOL webinars and conference calls with the states about how these programs were going to run, we knew that additional guidance was coming for pandemic unemployment assistance, which was the most complex of the programs since it covers people who are not normally eligible. However, we were able to move forward and implement the federal pandemic unemployment compensation, the $600 per week program, on Thursday, April 16th, 12 days after receiving initial USDOL guidance. During all of this, we continued planning for PUA and made the system enhancements that we could without final federal instructions, which arrived on Monday, April 27th. On that Friday, May 1st, we began accepting applications for pandemic unemployment assistance. We created online informational resources and stood up a temporary dedicated toll-free number for questions about pandemic unemployment assistance. Every state is making decisions unique to their situation in response to COVID-19. With PUA, some states that launched before Maine did so by accepting applications without the ability to pay benefits, or by having partial programs, such as initially just for self-employed or only for those who had exhausted state unemployment. It is vital that we balance the need to pay benefits with the need for program integrity. An April 21st report from the Office of the Inspector General highlighted concerns based on their prior audits of claims from the Great Recession a decade ago. The CARES Act created these expansive new programs and also provided funding for expanded Inspector General audits. The intent is clear: pay quickly, but pay appropriately. I believe that we have taken appropriate actions to meet this balanced intent. My goal for PUA was to launch a system that both accepted applications and paid claims and ensured that benefits were distributed in a fast and fair fashion to all the newly eligible people. Applications for self-employed people began last Friday, and the automatic enrollment of people who had previously been denied is happening now. Initial and retroactive payments to all newly eligible people will start this week. As you may recall, I joined one of Dr. Shaw's daily briefings 2 weeks ago. I announced that the department would allow benefits for certain cases that would normally require a fact-finding under regular circumstances, but we aren't in normal times. Based on the dates of the filings, I decided to allow for the automating of some decisions. Automating decisions means system programming, and this takes staff time and resources. These are the kinds of decisions each state is making. For example, our consortium partner, Mississippi, opted to focus only on PUA and not address other issues that came up along the way. In addition, Maine's law is different than Mississippi's. For example, Maine has alternative base periods and dependency allowances, and those differences needed to be included in our program. The department's next steps are to implement the last of the 3 new federal programs, Pandemic Extended Unemployment Compensation, or PEUC, and to activate the state's Extended Benefit Program. Both programs provide additional 13 weeks of benefits to people who have exhausted their state or pandemic unemployment assistance benefits. Initially, people in this group will be enrolled in pandemic unemployment assistance along with the other groups that I mentioned earlier. People who have exhausted state benefits are eligible for PUA so long as PEUC or extended benefits are not available. This is currently the case in Maine, so we will be enrolling them in PUA this week as well. Once PEUC and extended benefits are available, we will transfer people to the appropriate program based on the federal operating instructions. After this week, I expect that we'll be paying benefits to an even larger percentage of applicants. I know that there are still people who will be waiting because of an issue that we cannot automate away. My staff are working through this caseload as quickly and efficiently as possible, resolving issues when we can without holding a fact-finding interview. One other issue that I would like to address is ongoing communication between the department and the legislature. In the past, our legislative liaison would field questions from legislators and find answers to those questions. This meant contacting an unemployment staff person to get the answers. Due to the extremely high volume and complexity of issues and new programs, we could not continue this process in recent weeks. However, we are committed to working with you and the governor's office to put in place a process to address constituent issues moving forward. And I'm sure that we will be able to come up with that system by the end of the week. I would also be remiss if I did not mention that this week is Public Service Recognition Week. I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly recognize the dedication and the professionalism of the people in the department who have been working tirelessly 6 and 7 hours, 6 or 7, I wish it was only 6 or 7 hours, 6 and 7 days a week to help people through this crisis. They have adapted to an impossible workload. They have learned how to telework. They have adjusted to new systems, and they have also been dealing with their own challenges related to COVID-19. One of the things that has happened is that the Bureau of Unemployment Compensation staff have been designated as emergency responders during this crisis. So I'm not sure if everyone is aware of some of the other changes that have been made through through congressional legislation, but one of the changes was expanding family medical leave and sick leave. All emergency responders, including staff at the Bureau of Unemployment Compensation, are exempted from those provisions, which, and there has not been one person who questioned that decision. And I just want to say that, like at the beginning of my remarks, the woman I was quoting had said about a particular employee, and I think she said it best: perseverance and exceptionalism are the attributes that I have seen in my staff, and I know they will continue to provide that same level of professionalism as we move forward. I want to thank you for this opportunity to provide an overview of the work that we've been doing, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Fortman. We deeply appreciate your time. We have a lot of questions. And the way we're going to do questions for members of the committee who are on Microsoft Teams, just like if you're at the Horseshoe, if you have a question, you can raise your hand, you can say, Madam Chair, and I will recognize you for questions. And I will be sure to verbally recognize everyone who's online before we proceed to the next section. We wanted to start with some of the systems issues, and I think that all of us think that those 13 claims representatives who were with you on March 17th, when this crisis exploded from just over 600 claims to over 21,000 claims, we think those 13 state workers are indeed heroes, and we're grateful for how hard they're working. But it's clear that the department needs more resources even now. What financial resources or staffing or other aid do you need to build capacity to be able to provide the benefits that people need?
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate the question. I think that one of the background pieces of information that's important to also know is that traditionally the Department of Labor would carry on the books hundreds of unfilled positions. There were vacant positions, they were not funded, and they were there to so that the capacity existed in the time of an economic downturn to quickly fill positions. Again, the economy has been good and those vacant positions were eliminated from the books. We have gone through the process of recreating positions and through a financial order have requested additional staffing. We are working with actually, and I think Kim Smith, the Deputy Commissioner, is also on here, and I believe that we can say who we're working with, but that we are working, yes, Kim?
Yes.
Okay.
So Deputy Commissioner, can you introduce yourself, show your video, and address that? We'll be able
Good
to see it.
afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Kim Smith, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Labor. And we created 138 new positions by financial order, and we'll be posting those within the next few days, and have been working with LL Bean to help us hire and train those staff.
So you're anticipating hiring 138 new people?
In phases over the next few weeks, yes.
Are there features of our current unemployment system that you can talk about that are creating these delays that would be helpful for our constituents to understand? Features of the online system or the process from that initial claim, the steps that it requires on the back end from filing an initial claim to receiving your money?
I would say that we have, Senator, again, thank you. If I understand the question, it's with the existing application process.
Just, are there features of the system itself in terms of how Maine's unemployment system works? Because I think I'm hearing from many constituents who've never filed for unemployment in their lives. Mm-hmm. And the system itself is not intuitive. Are there features of the way the system is designed or the way the Maine system works, either legal requirements or system issues that are contributing to delays that constituents are experiencing?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I would answer, I'd get back to the beginning of your question where you said that, you know, are there things that people need to understand about the system? I think that many of the people who are applying for unemployment insurance right now have had limited experience with applying for unemployment insurance. And what we saw, particularly at the beginning, was that people did not understand that there were eligibility requirements that you needed to meet certain monetary obligations in order to be eligible. People did not understand the requirement of being able to work, available to work. So I think that you're absolutely right. There is a lot of lack of knowledge about how the program works that was confusing for people. There were many people were having challenges because they did not have the dates that they needed for their employment. So it is, the system itself, as I said, was designed in the 1930s for a particular kind of worker. And many of the people who applied early on did not fit into that category.
Senator Garin, you have a question?
I do, thank you. And actually, it's a question with a couple follow-up questions at the leave of the chair. Would I be allowed to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here, Commissioner Fortman. We certainly appreciate the long hours you and the staff have been putting in. For the few of my constituents who have been able to get through on the phone, they have said that the staff has been extremely polite and helpful. I know you are doing your best, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate all our workers and the Maine IT's attempts to solve these problems. We all understand that no state would have known to build a system that could accommodate the tremendous and unprecedented influx of unemployment filings. But today we're addressing the response, not what happened before, because we never would have known the extent of the need, but the response from your department and Governor Mills' administration. I have heard from hundreds of Mainers who see the department's and the Mills' administration's response as completely inadequate and an utter failure. Thousands of Mainers have gone 7 weeks without a paycheck. To me, this is completely unacceptable. Back in March, soon after the coronavirus outbreak reached New England, the Rhode Island Department of Labor and Training realized that their system, one nearly identical to ours, could not handle the volume of calls it had started to receive. They immediately contacted Amazon Web Services and built an entirely new system in 10 days. To date, this state that is only 3/4 the size of Maine has processed 70,000 more claims than we have. At any time, did you reach out to companies like Amazon for help in dealing with the problems caused by an overwhelming number of claims?
Senator, thank you for the question, and I am familiar with Rhode Island. I would respectfully disagree with the characterization that our system was nearly identical to Rhode Island. Rhode Island was working from a mainframe system that was much different and older than ours. The particular system that we were using and we are using was developed in the about 4 years ago. It was not in danger of failing to hold up to the stress. It was technically solid, and to engage in new technology that was not necessary, or at least in my opinion, it was not new technology that we needed. It was additional staffing. And I also would say that the numbers of claims that we have processed, I'm not familiar with Rhode Island's numbers, but it's roughly 80% of the people who have filed claims here in Maine have had their eligibility determined.
So you did not reach out to Amazon, is that correct?
That is correct.
Then I'm wondering about Google. When New York State's unemployment claims systems crashed, they reached out to Google, who created an entirely new system in a little more than a week. This included the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. That was back in early April, a month before Maine started accepting the PUA claims. Did you ever reach out to Google for help with claims system?
So Senator, again, what I would say is New York's system was very different, and I will stress that our system has never crashed. The phones have crashed, but the online processing system has not crashed. It is processing claims. And no, I did not reach out to Google either.
Well, from the reports I am hearing from Mainers is that the glitches in the system are causing them to have to call to get their accounts straightened out, so that the failures in the computer system are causing the phones to be overwhelmed because the filings are incorrect. Just yesterday, I spent some time on the phone with executives from Google. It only took a few hours to find the right people there and to set up a conference call. They told me that beginning a month ago and continuing today, they have the capability to set up an entirely new system for Maine to get us through the current crisis with claims and backlogs. They said they can do this for about $1 million, and that it could be up and running next week if we signed a contract today, which I'm sure the governor could get DAFs in here if it was necessary to look at that contract. They have sample contracts from the other states they are working with, which is New York, Florida, Texas, and Georgia. It would only come to about $10 for every claim that has been filed where people are waiting. If a single senator can get all this information in a few hours with a couple of phone calls, why hasn't the commissioner and your department been able to do the same thing? These Google executives told me that they had repeatedly reached out to people within state government in Maine offering to help us. So far, they have received no reply from you or anyone in the current administration. They could have ended the crisis in unemployment claims related to the computer problems a month ago if you had reached out to them. They could have gotten much needed money to set tens of thousands of Mainers weeks earlier if you had simply called them. Why did you not reach out to any of these companies who could have helped our suffering neighbors get the benefits they needed by getting our computer systems fixed so that it wasn't glitching out and causing them to have to call on the phones, which are never answered?
So, Senator, thank you for the question. And again, what I would like to say a couple of things. One is that I want to say again that the computers in New Hampshire and Florida are very different than in Maine. And while I am sure that they are processing claims, I want to stress that in Maine, we are also processing claims, and that there are tens of thousands of Maine people who are currently receiving over $240 million in benefits, that the computer system has not crashed. I agree with you that getting through on the phones is incredibly challenging. We are handling about 1,800 calls a day at this point.
Senator Guerin, I have a bunch of folks who've asked to ask questions, so thank you. We're going to move around the horseshoe and then return to you. Representative Sylvester, then Representative Lockman, and I see Representative Bradstreet has a question as well. Representative Sylvester, and let's limit follow-ups to 2 follow-ups, and that's it, and then so that every member of the committee can ask questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just, since apparently I broke the sound system during my introduction, I will just briefly reintroduce myself. I'm Representative Mike Sylvester. I am the House co-chair for Labor and Housing, and I represent the great city of Portland. To follow up on Madam Chair's question about the system design and perceptions of the system, I have fielded a fair amount of questions about how to walking people through screen about how to answer this question or that question. And I would say that just as a good example, the question I get the most is that when people are on the online screen, how do I file a claim? And I have to explain that it's the logo that's over on the left that says reemploy Maine. You click on that, right? And so people who are both very tech savvy and not tech savvy had the same exact question. And so that's just an example of ways that maybe it isn't as intuitive as one might hope. And I'll just give two quick other ones, which is that, when people get kicked out, which I've had a lot of calls about, that they're in the middle of and it just stops or freezes. Well, that might be their own error. The perception is that the system has crashed. And so I think that that's, I think that that's what people are responding to. And then the messages that people get, saying, that they're in this category or that category, or when they're in the middle of having to go back to the FAQ. So I think that was what the senator was trying to get at, is that the system itself, it doesn't have built-in help as you're going through it, and is not maybe as intuitive as it could be. And so I'm wondering if you could respond to that, just as we're looking forward to trying to figure out how, if should such a thing happen again. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Representative Sylvester, and I hope that nothing like this ever happens again in my lifetime. But in terms of the perception, the lack of intuitiveness about the system, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. Back in February, we agreed to participate in a evaluation, might be too strong a word, but an outside organization looking at how our system was designed and if there were things that we could do to improve the user experience. So in February, we had people from the Century Foundation, the National Employment Law Project, and others come walk through the system with us. They were also conducting focus groups across the state of Maine, and they were going to be providing that information back to us and to other states that had agreed to participate in their survey. We were looking forward to receiving that information and to making the suggested, assuming that there would be suggestions, and I'm sure there would be, changes to the system. But when we were in response to a crisis mode, did not seem like the time to make those changes. I would say moving forward, there are two things that we can do. One is to improve our communication, whether we have been adjusting the text boxes on the actual application process itself, as well as putting information on our website, Facebook page. But I agree, moving forward, we definitely have to improve how we talk about it. But the structural integrity of the program itself, of the system itself, was not something that I had any question about. And that is why I did not try alternative technological solutions at a time when my goal was to get benefits out to people as quickly as possible. And again, I want to say that there are tens of thousands of Maine people who are currently receiving benefits, over $240 million in benefits.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm glad to hear that, that we were looking forward in that way. And I think that we've had sort of an unprecedented focus group of the system. Yeah. And, and the legislature and certainly this committee would look forward. And I think that that's one of the things that the Maine people are looking for is to know that, to recognize that the system doesn't always function in an intuitive fashion. It doesn't, it's often confusing to people. And that, moving forward, anything that we can do to make that simpler and easier and more self-explanatory now is not the time to try to do it, but anything we can do now to explain the system the way it is right now, we'd certainly be willing to work with you, and I'm sure the full legislature would be willing to do that as well to help get out communications. Thank you.
So I'm going to recognize Representative Lockman, who's online, and then Senator Lawrence, and then Representative Bradstreet and Representative Cuddy. But I'm going to pause for a minute and take the chair's prerogative. I just want to read this list. I mean, this system was installed in 2017. It was rolled out in December of 2017. I served on the Labor and Housing Committee at that time. So did Representative Sylvester. So did Representative Austin and Representative Lockman. I'm just going to read the headlines from that period because we held hearings about how problematic that system installed under Commissioner Butera, under Governor LePage was. WGME, unemployment system upgrade causing frustration for filers. Kennebec Journal, this is January 28th, 2017. State's unemployment filing system continues to frustrate Mainers. Kennebec Journal 1 week later, legislators discuss complaints of labor officials. 2 weeks later, legislators continue to express concerns about unemployment filing system. March, and forgive me, this is 2018, Press Herald. Lawmakers still seeking fix for Maine unemployment filing system. March 11th, Maine agency botched unemployment system rollout, destroyed records. March 11th, how Maine bungled rollout of new jobless claims system. March 12th, and this is again in 2018 under the Governor LePage and Commissioner Butera. Lawmakers, and that was some of us in this room, rebuke Labor Department over claims of rushing unemployment system and destroying records. March 12th, memo calls new unemployment filing system a failure. March 14th, Labor Department fails to respond. March 14th, Press Herald editorial. Our view, as Maine's jobless claims system fails, state blames those hit the hardest. March 15th, Department of Labor memo details disastrous rollout of unemployment system. March 18th, Maine Department of Labor still mum on charges that botched system is hurting Mainers. March 22nd, legislature seeks investigation into unemployment system. March 22nd, lawmakers request investigation. March 23rd, Maine Department of Labor's new unemployment system to be investigated. Yes, so I will stop, but let me just say, we have all of these headlines. We knew the unemployment system was a problem in 2018 and 2017. So Commissioner, I know that you were not Commissioner in 2017 and 2018. You did not roll out this system. But to Senator Guerin's point, is it possible that there could be improvements made to the system that would help Mainers? Is it possible that we could seek additional technical support, regardless of which company we use, which vendor we use? Is it possible that there could be systemic improvements to this system? And that some of the problems were written into the system when it was paid for, when it was designed, when it was put into place 2 years ago?
Senator, thank you for the question. I think that there are always opportunities to improve a system. I think what I was faced with was it a system, the foundation that was stable and able to deliver benefits in a time of crisis? And it was my judgment that we were better, that Maine people would be better served to get benefits out to them than to try to recreate a system during a crisis. And again, that does not mean that I did not think that this was not, that it was like a perfectly user-friendly or an intuitive system. I did not. We were looking at ways of making changes and approaching that, again, as I said, in February before this hit. But at the time of a crisis, my goal was to get benefits out to Maine people, and this system has not crashed. And we are getting those benefits out.
Thank you, Senator Fortman. You're next, and Senator Lawrence is on deck.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I do have a question for the commissioner. First, I want to say how predictable of you to blame this mess on Paul LePage. Now, my question for the commissioner, related specifically to the restaurant industry and going back to how this all started. Commissioner, as you may recall, it was on Sunday afternoon, March the 15th, that Governor Mills issued her declaration of civil emergency, a unilateral declaration that empowered her to shut down businesses, seize private property, impose house arrest on people. We've never lived under anything like this ever before in Maine. In any case, on that day, reporters asked Governor Mills about what's going on in other states at the time. They asked her, Governor Mills, other governors are shutting down restaurants. Are you considering doing that? And Governor Mills responded, no, we're not considering shutting down restaurants. Well, as we all know now, not much more than 48 hours later, that is indeed what Governor Mills did. With the stroke of a pen, she shut down every restaurant in the state and threw tens of thousands of people out of work without notice. And I want to know, Commissioner, did Governor Mills give you any kind of a heads up to let you know what was the avalanche that was going to land on your head at the department?
So, Representative, I'm not sure how to answer that question. I think that we all started hearing, by looking at other states and what was happening. I don't know that anyone could have been prepared, and I don't think that there was any state that was prepared for the widespread impact that COVID-19 has had.
So you didn't get a heads up from the governor, I take it. She told everyone else she was not considering that, and then bang, she did it. And again, tens of thousands of people thrown out of work, and a lot of them still waiting for their check.
Senator Lawrence, you're next.
Thank you. I have to figure out how to turn on my mic. How are you doing, Laura?
I'm hanging in there, Senator. How are you?
Good, good. So I have a couple of unique questions that relate to my district and geographically where it is. But first of all, I want to thank you and the Mills administration to how quickly you responded to this and how well off Maine is in this pandemic. 35 minutes from where I'm sitting is Essex County, Massachusetts. And I know you know that because you went to UNH and you know this area very well. But in Essex County, Massachusetts, 1 out of every 75 people has been infected by the coronavirus. Whereas in York County, where I am, it's 1 out of 1,000. And one of the unique aspects of my district is that we have about 10,000 people who travel to New Hampshire or Massachusetts to work, and we have 10,000 people who travel from New Hampshire and Massachusetts here to work. So while everybody thinks everything is so much greener on the other side of the Piscataqua Bridge, I can tell you I'm getting equally as many complaints about the New Hampshire unemployment system, the Massachusetts unemployment system, constituents calling me, asking me to try to help resolve their problems in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. So it's kind of universal on what's going around. And I also want to thank you because early on, to give you an example, I have a constituent who owns a restaurant in New Hampshire that had to close immediately because New Hampshire closed its restaurants. And they didn't even know whether they apply to Maine, apply to New Hampshire, what do they do? Because they had Maine residents and New Hampshire residents working at that New Hampshire restaurant. So your office was very helpful in getting them to understand they had to go to New Hampshire. They were very frustrated with the New Hampshire system. It was very slow and very problematic. In thinking of that, how do you think we've done, and I'm not talking about the PUA, but how do you think we've done in comparison to New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and some of the other New England states in responding to these unemployment benefit claims?
Senator, thank you so much. I appreciate the question. I think that if you look at how we rolled out our programs, we're about in the middle of the pack in terms of the country. I think that, in terms of New England, the only New England states that have pandemic unemployment assistance up and running are Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Maine, we just rolled it out on Friday. We're talking to our colleagues in New Hampshire, Vermont, and Connecticut. I think this has been, you can pick up a newspaper anywhere in the country and insert the same stories. This has been incredibly frustrating for people everywhere, for departments of labor everywhere. I think that later this week, when we start rolling out the benefits for pandemic unemployment assistance, when this is all said and done, I'd say we're going to be looking like we were one of the earlier states. Many states began accepting applications, but were not delivering benefits. But I think states all over.
I thank you for that, and whatever more assistance you need from us, please be very vocal about that. My next question, my last question deals with, in my private life, I practice law, and a lot of what I do is estate planning. And I've seen a spike in estate planning, not only from healthcare workers, but from a lot of workers who see themselves having to return to work or having been forced back to work. And it's kind of frightening that they're now thinking about, I need to have a will, I need to have a power of attorney if I end up, in the hospital, unable to get out. Who's going to take care of my kids? Who's going to be guardians of my kids? So I wondered if either now or maybe during one of your briefings with Dr. Shaw, you could speak to what are the rights of those workers in saying, I'm concerned about the healthcare, because some of them, and also face the border issue too as well, because some of them are Maine residents having to travel down to Massachusetts or southern New Hampshire, where the infection rate is so much higher.
So thank you, Senator. There are a couple of issues there. One is, and I don't know that you were asking this specifically about whether or not those people have any protections in terms of unemployment insurance and accepting suitable work. And if that's part of the question, pandemic unemployment assistance has specifically provided some provisions in there where someone may be able to refuse what would normally be suitable work if there were specific health reasons. Since it's one of those cases, and as an attorney you'll know this, it depends. So it would require understanding the facts around the case. But there are some provisions built into pandemic unemployment assistance, and I'd be happy to elaborate on that at a different time.
How does that affect cross-border issues when they may be getting the unemployment in Massachusetts?
Right. So again, pandemic unemployment assistance is a federal program. So the law is the same, and there's a checklist. How it's interpreted by each state may vary slightly, but the law is a federal law and a federal protection.
So if they work in Massachusetts under the pandemic insurance, are they getting it through that state or are they getting it through Maine?
If they are employed in Massachusetts, unemployment insurance, you're covered where your place of employment is. So if they're employed here in Maine, pardon?
What about the PUA?
Yeah, that's run through individual states, Senator.
So they would get their unemployment through Mass, but the PUA through Maine?
So pandemic unemployment assistance is a federal program, but it is administered through the state unemployment bureau. So in Massachusetts, pandemic unemployment assistance in Massachusetts is run through the Massachusetts Department of Labor, just as here it's run through the Maine Department of Labor.
Thank you.
Senator Lawrence, I know that every member of the committee has other questions, so we're just going to move to Representative Bradstreet and then Representative Cuddy, and we can definitely come back to you. I think there are a lot of questions about the PUA that we were planning to ask a little bit later in the hearing, because I know that's a huge issue of interest. Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for being here today. I have several questions. I'll try to get through a couple of them, but
and we will be rotating back.
Okay,
so I'm asking each person to just stick to one question with 2 follow-ups, and then we'll come back to people.
Thank you. I'd just like to say in regards to comments that were made a few minutes ago that I believe in May of 2019, OPEGA reviewed the unemployment insurance system in Maine, and they thought things were working pretty well. As a matter of fact, they gave it a good bill of health. So I just don't want people to be left with the impression that we had a floundering system inherited from the previous administration when this thing hit. I think that's a misrepresentation, and it should be clarified. Anyway.
Representative Bradstreet, you have a question for
Yes, I do.
Okay.
In light of the statements that the department has had to wait for federal instructions and help on some issues, did the department ever contact anyone from Maine's congressional delegation for help?
This was not that just Maine was looking for guidance. We've been in touch with the, I don't recall if we asked specifically, but we've been in touch with the congressional delegation throughout this.
You know, I asked this question myself, so I requested some information from Senator Collins' office, and they said guidance from the Department of Labor provided to the states between April 2nd and April 10th. Since that time, they have not received a request from the Maine Department of Labor for any assistance in order to implement the pandemic unemployment assistance for self-employed people or assistance connecting with the U.S. Department of Labor for additional guidance or clarification. Aside from all of that, if you believe you did not receive adequate information to start the implementation, what proactive steps did the department take to rectify that?
So we were part of, you know, the National Association of State Workforce Agencies. We're part of the National Governors Association, that we were working as other states. It's not as though Maine in particular did not receive guidance. Plus we were in direct contact with the department, the U.S. Department of Labor.
One last follow-up, yep, and then we're going to go down to Representative Cuddy.
We've mentioned Google and a couple other places. Were there any other businesses or organizations that may have had some expertise with these issues that you have contacted and asked for help?
So I believe, as my deputy said, we're currently working with LL Bean to help us with some hiring that we're doing. We've had conversations with a number of vendors. But again, our goal has been to take the system that we do have, because we felt it was structurally sound, and work as quickly as possible to get benefits out to Maine people.
Representative Cuddy, you're next, and then Representative Carney.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Fortman, for being here. And going back a little bit to some of what has been said, it sounds as though the department has been working primarily on gearing up staff-wise. You talked about a call center that you've been working with, now working with LL Bean, this new 138 people that you're interested in hiring, the way you've been staffing up, as opposed to technology. And I left my job in a couple of weeks ago for COVID-related reasons and did file for unemployment personally. And I found, while I didn't find the system to be intuitive, I never had a problem getting onto the system itself. It never crashed. It's always available. I'm able to check my weekly certifications, do all the things that you have to do when you're unemployed and seeking unemployment insurance. The problem that I have had people talking to me about is their inability to get through on the phones. And that sounds to me like that's what you've been primarily trying to address. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct, Representative Cuddy. And one of the reasons, it's not just getting additional people, it's that normally if we hire staff, we spend 3 weeks of intensive training with staff. And then for the next 3 to 6 months, they receive individual coaching. And that has been absolutely impossible to achieve. And so, but the main problem is, how do you go from a small group of people who are subject matter experts, ramp up that expertise and make it available to the people who need it?
Absolutely. And I want to also put this a little bit in perspective for myself as well, because I find that in this time where so much of our lives has been really altered by this COVID-19 crisis. If we were having the problems that we're having right now during a regular time of unemployment, even at a higher period in winter or something, I would have a lot of very hard questions. But we are currently, you mentioned 21,000 applicants 1 week when it had been 600 prior. I mean, that's 30 times the number of applicants suddenly. Staffing is obviously, to me, the issue. And where we have now over 100,000 people, some 75, 80% of whom have begun receiving benefits already, but we're trying to address the problems for the few or the number who haven't started receiving benefits yet. What can we do to help you with the staffing? Is there anything that you need legislatively to happen? What can we do to make that process faster and easier?
Oh, I don't know what can be done right now. I mean, that's why we reached out to LL Bean to try to help us doing some of the interviewing for us and some of the screening, because we just don't have the staff to even move away from the work that they're doing in order to participate in that initial interviewing and screening. I think one of the things I would ask for is that moving forward, we're creating new positions. We're going to have to get those on the books. I think making sure moving forward that that there's a recognition that keeping vacant positions on the books for the Department of Labor is absolutely critical in order to be able to ramp up in a time of an emergency. The other thing that none of us could have predicted, I mean, I was labor commissioner during the Great Recession. What's different about that and different about this? Or there are a couple of things. The first is that we at least had a little bit of time, some warning, so that you could start bringing people on, start hiring, start training. And this time it was virtually overnight that we were hit with it. And then the other thing was that the way we were structured was we had staff here in the office, and we had to figure out, because of COVID-19, how to take staff who may have been, had compromised immune systems or may have been at risk to physically come into the office and put together a whole new system that allowed us to perform this work through remotely. So about half of our unemployment insurance staff are working remotely. So those are the challenges that we face, Representative. And we're looking at how can we do training differently if we're training and interviewing people remotely. And I'm open to suggestions.
So as my last follow-up then, was there previously any cross-training that went on with other departments so that there were people who had some knowledge base around unemployment who could move in, or is there any cross-training like that at all done in the department?
So in the department, the two bureaus that are most closely related are our Bureau of Unemployment Compensation and our Bureau of Employment Services. So those are the Career Center staff, and they have some familiarity with unemployment, like a very baseline knowledge, not in-depth knowledge, but, and that's the other difference from other recessions, is that typically what would happen is you would start seeing plant closures, and we would have a team that would go out, they would meet with folks on site and talk to them about unemployment insurance, about health insurance, about possible job retraining, all of those things. And so we've had to adapt that and try to provide it through Zoom. We do Zoom, and by we, I mean our staff at the Bureau of Employment Services, as well as partnering with unemployment. But there was just not that, that site that services could be provided on that we've had in the past. And so those staff are the ones that are closest, but no one had, people could tell people how to fill out an application, but in terms of explaining unemployment, that that depth of knowledge just wasn't widespread.
Thank you.
Representative Carney and then Representative Rikerson.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, and thanks so much, Commissioner Fortman, for being here and answering our questions today. I have one follow-up to Representative Cuddy's question, which is the positions that you are imploring us to retain. I think you called them the vacant positions that were on the books. When were those eliminated?
They've been eliminated over the past 15 years. So it seems like every time people are looking for budget savings, even though those are federally funded positions, if they're filled, they look like you're carrying more state employees than you actually are. So it's been probably at least the last 10 years that positions have been eliminated.
Okay, so moving forward, that's one thing that we can fix. I wanted to talk about another issue that perhaps we can fix moving forward. I see that it sounds like you've been trying to eliminate the pressure points that come from the lack of staffing by automating a lot of approvals of claims or denials of claims. When those claims are denied, does that mean that those claimants get forwarded on to the PUA system? And can you please explain whether they have to go through the process again or not if they've been denied for that reason?
Yes, thank you, Representative. You're absolutely right that so the interplay between state unemployment insurance and the new pandemic unemployment assistance, one of the eligibility requirements for pandemic unemployment assistance is that you must not be eligible for state unemployment. So what some states are doing is they make you apply for state unemployment insurance, you are denied, and then you must reapply for the pandemic unemployment assistance. One of the ways that we are streamlining it is that if someone has already applied for state unemployment insurance, they are being denied, but they are immediately being rolled over into pandemic unemployment assistance. Now, this gets to one of the points that I believe both Senator Guerin and Representative Sylvester raised about the system not being clear about what's happening. People are receiving notifications that they're being denied, and that does escalate anxiety. And that is something we do need to correct. We've got a new message on there now, but I understand when people are anxious, it's hard to absorb information when you're worried about how you're going to pay your rent. But being denied for state unemployment insurance is actually a necessary step, and you will automatically be enrolled in pandemic unemployment assistance. You will not be required to fill out a new application or do anything else.
Great, thanks for clarifying that. One other thing I wanted to talk about, and it has to do with the stress and the anxiety. The constituents who have reached out to me, some of them have found the system to work very flawlessly and smoothly, and they have no complaints about it. Others had glitches and were able to reach out to people, I think in the Machias Career Center, who were able to fill in and answer their questions. And they, to echo what everybody else said, the staff have been extraordinarily helpful. One of the big causes of stress and anxiety for, as you mentioned, for people who, don't know if they're going to be able to put food on their table or pay their rent to take care of themselves and their family, is the hang up with the phone system, no pun intended. But is there a way to create a triage within the phone system that might also eliminate some of the crunch that you have with regard to training people, where perhaps you can create a triage system that will shunt all of the people who are locked out in one direction for new hires to handle who are only trained on that issue. And then I had a couple of categories here. A phone line for people who have been instructed to call in, because I'm getting complaints from people who have been told to call a number and then they call, I think it's the appeals line, and then the appeals line says no calls are being accepted at this time. And then there could possibly be another category for people who have an unexplained problem in duration of more than 2 weeks that go to kind of more highly trained troubleshooters.
So thank you, Representative, and it's good to hear about the Machias Career Center. That was one of the first things that we did training for Career Center staff on password resets, because we were hearing repeatedly that people were locking themselves out and needed that sort of assistance. And so we were encouraging people to reach out directly to the career centers to provide that kind of assistance. The way that the phone system works right now is on the regular 800 number. The contact center is the tier 1 support, so they take the incoming calls. We've worked with some of their staff to do like an internal tier 2 to do pretty much what you're saying, Representative. So I take regular calls. It's a simple question. How do I fill out this application? A person who's received basic unemployment insurance assistance takes that. If they have a problem, it gets elevated to their tier 2 contact center person. And then our unemployment insurance, our bureau staff is the tier 3, I guess, at this point for the complicated systems. The bottleneck is still that group of experienced people is so small. But we are trying to do that kind of triage. We've also done additional training for Career Center staff to handle certain other kinds of issues. There are issues around name changes, and we are trying to segment those, Representative. We're also trying to identify what are the key problems that people are having, and how do we can we resolve those in groups? And again, as I had said in my statement, we're trying to automate as many things as we can while still preserving the fact that it's a two-party system. You have an employer and an employee, and there are issues that you're going to have hearings on.
Thank you, Representative Carney. Representative Rikerson is next, and then Representative Dorr, then Representative Austin, and then Representative Tucker. Representative Rikerson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for being here. Actually, I probably shouldn't thank you. I should thank IT, because you're not really here. So, but I find that we're talking about structural issues or systems issues, but and a number of times you said the system is structurally sound, and I definitely agree with that. From what I've seen of it, it's structurally sound and it's robust, and I don't think we need a whole new system as suggested. But I do think there could be huge improvement in just the web interface. And that's not somebody who's an expert in unemployment or somebody who's an expert at programming, but somebody who's a web designer that follows basic conventions of web pages, and that's graphics mostly. So there's things on the site that are not really conventions that most websites use, like buttons, which means here's something you press for a user action, or pull down menus. And it's just not well designed graphically. And this is something that really could be improved drastically without huge changes to the program, without any changes to the program, really. And I'm just wondering if there's possible to get, say, 3 designers, web designers, and take a look at it and offer suggestions. And then, you know, if you can find somebody to change the graphics so they're more intuitive, because I believe there's probably hundreds of people or thousands that are really unable to access it just because it's a different different graphic than you're used to. My bank has a superior, web page, and it's a local Maine bank. Obviously, it doesn't have volume, but it's just the graphics of the page. And that would make it much easier for people to navigate. So and this is something that could be changed in a few hours or overnight. This system might be down. It's not a week-long process to change it. So I'm just wondering if you could, since we're obviously desperate here, and if we could get some people just to take a look at that and have some suggestions, because I think it would make a huge difference. Thanks.
Thank you. Happy to consider that.
Representative Dorr and then Representative Tucker. Oh, excuse me, and Representative Austin as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can't, I want to say Laura, but it's Commissioner Fortman, sorry. Can you share with us what the staffing levels were prior to this pandemic and so many people losing their jobs? And also, as of today, how can I say this? Let's see. As of today, the various elements of unemployment includes phones, claim reps, adjudicators, and appeals. How many staff do we have right now that are doing this, and what is their level of training?
So, and again, I may defer the continuation of this comment to the Deputy Commissioner Kim Smith, but right now we have about 100 Bureau of Employment Services staff to do claims, appeals, tax, every function within that bureau. The benefits staff are the ones that we keep talking about, those 13 benefits staff. We've pulled staff from taxation and everywhere else to work on it. And then we have about 100 claims reps through the contract that we have with the claims service. So basically that claims service, that contact center has as many people in it answering the phones as we have for the entire bureau performing all of the functions. When I was commissioner before, we had about 200 people in the bureau, as well as some vacant positions so that we can staff up. So the bureau is about half the size that it was about 8 years ago. But Deputy Commissioner Smith, is there anything you want to add to that?
Hi, this is Kim Smith. No, I think that is an accurate summary of where we are.
So just to interject, I mean, I think what you said, we're currently half the size we were 8 years ago.
In the Bureau of Unemployment Compensation.
Representative Dorr, do you have any follow-ups, or should we move to Representative Austin and then Representative Tucker?
You can go ahead, because my next question was, what was the size of the department in 2009, and Commissioner's already answered that.
Okay. Representative Austin and then Representative Tucker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, thank you for being with us. I want to kind of follow on the thread that both Representative Sylvester and Carney brought up, and that's kind of just a process thing. And this is really so simple, it's probably embarrassing to share it, but it may be something that if it is not on the website could be a help. And I would certainly be more than eager to put it out to my constituents, because I know folks that have called in and they've gotten so far, and then to go to the others' comments, there's a glitch or there's something that happens, and then so they're partway through the process, and so they must not be pushing or pushing the right button, as Representative Brickerson has talked about, or they just don't have the necessary information. And I'm wondering if it's not on the website now, and we could have a list of that those prerequisite pieces of information that they need at the ready so that we could at least arm them with those as they go into the actual process of applying. If that's something that we could take and get out on our systems here, you know, within our districts, I think if that would help, that's certainly something I know most of us would be very happy to do to assist them. So I don't know if you can add to that.
Yeah, Representative, we do have that information, but again, I agree. Sometimes finding things on our website is challenging because there's so much there, and I'd be happy to give you that information because there are things that people should have before they sit down and try to fill out an application. One of the things that does happen is that if you walk away from your computer, so let's say you're working on your application, but you think, oh, I want to do direct deposit, but I don't have my bank information, and I go off, there's a security feature that automatically shuts you down. And that can be very frustrating.
Those are great things that they probably would not necessarily think of. And especially, as you said, there's so many that are doing this for the very first time. And being anxious does not help your vision. Or you, I know when they're anxious, it's a lot of information to take in. And so I thank.
Representative Tucker.
Thank you for coming, Commissioner Fortman. I appreciate that. It's wonderful to see you.
It's good seeing you too.
As a state rep, I don't get calls very often when benefits are granted. Mostly the calls I get are people who are upset or angry with varying degrees of credibility. And so I get the impression as a state rep that nothing is right, because those are the calls I get. And so I can get all tied in knots, and their anger and their being upset kind of rubs off on their representatives. But you've told us today that you've had maybe 70% of claims have gone straight through. The 75,000 people are on. $240 million has been distributed. I understand that we've had a saying in the courts and a saying in the Workers' Comp Commission in processing those type of claims that 90% of our time was always spent on 10% of the cases. I suspect that phenomenon applies in unemployment. Would you say that's true?
I'd say that probably is true, Representative. And also, there are two programs that are going on right now. So you have your state unemployment insurance program, and that has one set of rules. And then you have brand new federal programs that have a different set of rules. And all of these must work together. They have to work in tandem. So it is incredibly complicated. And I can understand and sympathize with the frustration people are having as they're trying to navigate their way through this.
Yeah. I would just be curious to know, for every complaint call that I get of someone who is messed up in the system and delayed, how many others are actually getting their benefits without any problems, and they're not calling me up to tell me.
We have recently, I mean, the statements that I read at the beginning of my statement to you actually came from people. We are starting to get, which is why it's heated up. We're starting to get thank you notes from folks. So, and I figure anyone who sits down and writes us a thank you note, they've had incredible service from us, because it's been my experience too that people are quicker to sit down and write something when they're motivated because they're upset or they need something, rather than when they've actually received what it was they were looking for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I have a number of legislators who've asked to ask follow-up questions, and I think that's really important. I also think, we had said we'd go to pandemic unemployment at the end, but I know that there are a lot of people at home listening that have some questions about that section of things. But before we move on to people's sort of second round, Representative Morris, did you want to ask a question at this moment in time, or do you want to reserve your time for later? All right, I'm going to assume that's a reserving time for later. Is there anybody else who hasn't asked a question that we missed? I don't believe so. Is the consensus of the committee, is it okay if we move to pandemic unemployment for a little bit? That's the unemployment that got rolled out on Friday for the self-employed.
Are we coming back to this topic?
Oh, absolutely. If we want to stay on systems for a while, we could stay on systems. I just know that there are a lot of, that we're at 10 minutes of 3, and I know that there are a number of self-employed people that have questions about PUA.
It had been my understanding that we were going to go by sections.
By categories? Okay, yeah. We can do that. We'll stick to that then.
And Madam Chair, I just had 2 follow-up questions on this section.
Okay. So Representative Sylvester, I believe Senator Guerin after Representative Sylvester, and then Representative Petty. Go ahead, Representative Sylvester.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, I have a couple questions that are follow-up on questions. I just want to make sure that for folks listening at home that they have clarity. The first one is on a question asked by Senator Lawrence. At the beginning of people filing unemployment, a lot of employers had confusion about the fact that their employment rating would not be disrupted or charged for people filing for unemployment, and there were a lot of employers who reached out to me asking about that, and were told that it wouldn't affect their rating. But the ones who did dispute claims on the belief that it would upset their ratings pushed many people back in the system to have fact finding and those sorts of things. So as we are looking at workers, as Senator Lawrence said, being called back to work, over the last day or two, I've had many calls from both employers and employees. Employers who are asking what should they do if workers say they shouldn't come back to work and are under an understanding that they should dispute those claims if they're not, and are asking me if that's true, and employees asking if I don't go back to work, do I lose my unemployment benefits? And so you said that you would speak about this on a later date, and so for clarity, should employers wait before disputing those claims that their employees, if they have employees who have been collecting unemployment, should they wait to hear for more clarity from you about whether, and for employees, what should they do? So that's my first.
So Representative, if I understand your question correctly, you're asking, will employers have their experience rating impacted if employees are collecting unemployment because of COVID-19? Is that accurate?
No, I was using that as an example of employers who disputed people's claims under a false impression of how things would work. And so employers are getting ready to dispute claims because employees under the act are saying, I'm afraid to go back to work because of COVID. I have an immunodepressed child. I have all of these different issues. And you said to Senator Lawrence that you would speak about that at a future date. So what should employers and employees do until they get more clarity?
So it's, I think Representative, so first of all, I just want to be really, really clear. Employers' experience ratings are not being impacted by COVID-19. So let me just say that and then move on to the question that you asked, which is if an employer is reopening and their employee refuses to come back to work, what happens next? Is that accurate?
That's it. They have some reason to fear that going back to work will adversely affect their health because of COVID-19, which is covered under this.
Right.
Federal.
So that is one of the cases that will require a fact finding, that there are protections under PUA for people to refuse to go back to work under certain circumstances. We would talk to the employee and find out why they were concerned about this. Did their physician tell them to not go to work? What were the reasons why they felt that that could not happen? Did their employer offer them a telework opportunity that they refused? There are many permutations of that, but the expectation is that if you are offered suitable work, unless there is that good cause exemption, that you would go back to work.
Okay, thank you. Representative Carney, and you had a discussion about how people who had been denied were automatically rolled over and would accept. For folks who heard that on the trainings that you offered, on the Zoom trainings that you did before PUA rolled out, and didn't go back and file a new claim, how long do you expect that for those people for that rollover to happen, and for that people to see checks? I mean, that's the number 2 question I've been getting over the last day or two.
Yeah, fair question. We anticipate that rollover to be taking place this week, and that checks, well, benefits, we all use the shorthand of checks. Unemployment benefits are paid either through direct deposit or through a bank card that's issued specifically for unemployment insurance, and those benefits will be paid out within 7 days, which is very different than traditionally unemployment insurance takes between 10 and 14 days.
Thank you. And then just lastly, you had said you'd take any suggestions. And so 2 suggestions that have come through while we've been sitting here is one that, it would be helpful to have little links to YouTubes on the side of the page to say, are you a sole proprietor? Here's how to fill out this screen. Right. And those sorts of things, which again, would just be a link and walking people through screens, and seemed like a very good idea. And then, as we talked about before, people get very frustrated when they see that the screen comes up at the end and they're expecting to see success, and they see you must, please call the DOL because you have an issue. And that perhaps there would be some mechanism for people who have been directed by the DOL to call specifically about an issue, so that they weren't put back at the end of the queue because they feel, I think that's one of the largest points of frustration. So I just offer those 2 suggestions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Senator Garin is next, but I just have a follow-up to Representative Sylvester. The majority of people that I heard from that applied on Friday got a message that said you were eligible for 0 benefits, 0.00 benefits. I also heard from some people who got a message that said you are disqualified until 9,999. What is that? 99.99. Those error messages, I think, have significantly contributed to the anxiety. Can everyone who got you're entitled to 0 benefits be assured that they are in fact going to get benefits? I think there's a great deal of confusion and heartache about that.
Yes. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate the question and also the anxiety. We, over the weekend, put new wording on that particular new text on that screen to try to make it clearer that the 0 benefit was for state unemployment insurance, which is a necessary step in order to be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. And I know that was very, very unclear and very confusing for people, and I'm sure created all kinds of unnecessary anxiety. But that 0 benefit was for Maine state unemployment insurance, and those people should check their accounts, because they should start seeing their pandemic unemployment assistance benefits start showing up there, or the notification of that within about 48 hours.
And just to put a finer point on that, because I think people hear state and they say, well, it's the Maine system.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, in your introductory remarks, you differentiated between different programs. But I think for most Mainers, especially those who are not, who are filing for the first time even, It's all coming through the same
Same
system.
thing.
So what you're saying is they're ineligible for what existed prior to April 6th to the passage of the CARES Act. But it's good news because that is a first step in being eligible for the benefits that have just come down. So it's good news to get a 0-0.
It's just as when we sent out denial letters, we were trying to tell people that was actually good news. Confusing beyond belief, but absolutely accurate.
Senator Guerin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My mic wasn't working there. I'm happy to follow up on Representative Sylvester's comments about businesses and some of the frustrations of businesses related to the callbacks. And I had a suggestion and a question. My suggestion would be a robust statement from the department and from the administration clarifying that people are expected to go back to work if there is no underlying condition there that stops that. I think I'm hearing from a lot of employers whose employees would like to stay out and get the extra $600. So they're making more than they normally make in a week, and the employers are having a hard time conveying that message to them that they are required to come back to work or lose their unemployment benefits unless there's some extenuating circumstance there. So a robust statement to employees, I think, would be helpful there. Another frustration I'm hearing from employers, and I actually felt that frustration myself, is if you are aware of fraud. I had somebody apply for unemployment at through my business who we had never heard of. So I called the fraud line. I was on hold for over an hour and then it just disconnected. And I've called repeated times to all of the different employer numbers listed by the state and have been unable to get through ever, even having been on hold many times and then just have it drop the call. So I personally am feeling that frustration that Mainers are feeling on drop calls, on being on hold for hours. And I did eventually get through and it said, leave your number and we'll call you back. And I thought, oh, golden ticket, they'll call me back. Well, that was last week and no callbacks. So this person is collecting benefits and is totally fraudulent.
So Senator, thank you for bringing that to my attention, and I'm sorry that's been your experience. If you would, and I'll check into what's happening with our employer lines. Fraud is one of the things that we are extremely concerned about. And like every other state, we have integrity measures that we must adhere to. And if you wouldn't mind just sending me an email with that information, I would really appreciate receiving it, and let's and check into what's happening with our employer lines. As I had said earlier, many of our folks who typically are dedicated to taxes and other employer services have been helping out on the benefits side. So that may be part of the issue, but you should still be able to report fraud. We are extremely concerned about that and very vigilant about how we follow up on those cases.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Senator Guerin, you've moved us nicely into the next section. We want to talk about phones. We have a lot of questions about that. We then want to talk about staffing. I know there are a number of questions from the committee about that. And then go back a little bit more into more detail in the online system and some of the problems with the portals, benefits, and then pandemic unemployment assistance. And so you just really flagged one thing, and I think we're all hearing from many constituents who try to call at the right time. They follow the rules. If their name is Bellows, they do Mondays for and can't get through and can't even know. So there's some call centers that allow you to leave a message to get a call back at another point. There are other, call centers that allow you to know what place in line you are, so you can know, are you number 100,000 as you got on March 31st, or are you number 10? And so I think what's really hard is that people are spending hours on the phone and then getting dropped. Sometimes they're reaching a person, and I've definitely heard this multiple times from multiple constituents, and they get hung up on in the middle of a call and then feel like they have to go back to the queue. So is there something we can do with the telephone system to modernize the system itself, to create that system where you can get the automated callback and know that that's going to happen and not have to carry your phone around? One constituent said she literally got in the shower with the phone on speaker, got out of the shower, and 3 hours later, she could not get through. She never got through that day. Any thoughts about that?
Well, Senator, first of all, I would say that the handling the phones has been, the primary pain point since this began. And in my statement, I tried laying out all of the steps that we had taken to strengthen the system, to move from one call network to a different call network. I think as we're trying to ramp up the expertise of the people on the line. We are at a place now where we're handling about 1,800 calls a day, and that is up dramatically from where we were 6 weeks ago, where it was about 300 calls a day. We'll continue to try to improve that. The challenge with the call back is that if you've got the same group of people, whether they're answering the phone or that's how we work on Saturdays, is to try to make those call back where people have left messages in the customer messaging portal. But we are open to looking at other ways of handling that as well. But I don't think you'd find anyone here who thought that that the calls were our best feature. It is definitely not. And some of the hangups, Senator, I believe were caused when we were having those system problems. And as I said, the Maine OIT folks worked 24 hours a day over the course of 3 solid days to try to resolve those issues. And I believe that hang-up piece has been resolved. But if that's still happening this week, please let me know.
Representative Cuddy, did you have a question? And then Representative Carney, and then Representative Bradstreet.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Commissioner, I wanted to go back a little bit to some things you said before I ask my question, just to make sure I'm understanding things correctly. Earlier, I believe you said that the Bureau of Unemployment Compensation currently has half the staff that did when you left. Am I getting that correct?
Roughly.
Roughly, yeah. And then the second thing that I would like to ask, and I know that you have done this multiple times, but would you, as briefly as possible, walk me through what you did when you expedited claims? I know a number of claims were just approved, a number of claims were just rejected, and could you just briefly walk me through that again?
So we were seeing that there were certain types of situations that were kind of putting people in a holding pattern, and that normally we would require fact-finding. We pulled those situations, and some of them were there were monetary eligibility. So that gets back to did you earn the more than $5,100 in the previous 18 months? Did you earn the $1,700 in the 2 previous calendar quarters? If you didn't, and you had indicated on your application that you had wages from a particular employer, but the employer's name wasn't there, We looked at all of those things, and based on what we saw, we were able to say, you know what, these folks were not going to be monetarily eligible. So if we deny them kind of in a group, and anyone who's denied has appeal rights. So this protects the appeal rights of the person. We did not do anything that removed an appeal right from anyone. But based on the information we saw, we said this group of people is likely, like 99% likely to be denied. Let's go ahead and do that, preserve the appeal rights. So when they get this, if they want to appeal it, they can. But that denial would also free them up to be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. Also, if we looked at the case and we could see that there were certain kinds of things, like you may have said, oh, I worked at, Scott's Takeout, and then when I looked at the names of the employer there, it was actually, Cuddy Limited, but I didn't realize that that was the same thing, and so I filled out the wrong information. We were saying, yeah, this really is probably where that person worked. So we tried to look at those issues and say, okay, that person's probably going to be eligible, so let's approve that. Again, since this is a two-party system, the employer would be notified that Laura Fortman was applying for unemployment insurance, and this may be like Senator Guerin's case, where it's like, guess what? Laura Fortman never worked for me. So there's always that balance, but we just felt that there were thousands of people who were in one of these buckets, and we needed to move it forward and preserve the appeal rights for both. So either freeing them to go forward and collect benefits, or moving them, denying them so that they could be eligible for pandemic unemployment, or presumptively.
If they're denied though, did they need to do anything last Friday? If they got a denial letter, if they were one of the 7,000 people that said you are denied, they didn't have to do anything last Friday. They should just wait and be patient, and they should see some money in the next week, possibly?
Yes, and they should be looking at their account as well. Because there is a specific account where information should be populated in there for them as well. But we are not requiring a new application.
And would that information be in the correspondence tab or in a different tab?
Deputy Smith, I think it's probably in correspondence, but I don't know,
Yes.
Kim, if you know.
Yeah, this is Kim Smith. So there's a couple of places they can look. They can look at their benefits inquiry. They can look at the summary and see the status of their weekly claims, or they can go over to the inquiry and look at correspondence, and that will have every letter that we've sent them. That's the quickest way to find out what's happening with your account. A lot of those letters are also sent out through the mail. Anything that has appeal rights, we have to send out through the mail. But certainly it's faster if you look at your account online.
Will that money be in this week or next week? Forgive me for not being clear about that. If they're waiting for money and they didn't do anything, they just are automatically folding into the PUA system. Or say they filed last Friday. Should they be seeing money this Friday, or is it going to take another week?
No, it should be this week.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I had one
Sorry,
last follow-up.
forgive me, Representative Cuddy, go for it.
That is A-okay. Those are excellent questions. So the last piece of what I was sort of thinking about with the previous two questions was that you're bringing on more call volume staff or more call center staff to increase the volume, because we do have thousands of Mainers who are unable to get through.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if there's been any thought given to the possibility of beginning to accept phone calls on the weekend as well as during the week, so that people have other days that they could try to get through.
Yeah, we're thinking about it, Representative. Last Saturday, we did take calls on Saturday. Again, it's, do we have the capacity to do that in terms of staffing? Plus, we do need some time when people are not on the phones in order to return some of the calls and do some of the other work.
And let me actually just be super clear too, because one of the things you said sort of brought this up. The amount of work that's being done by the people taking these phone calls, researching it, doing it all is enormous. And I'm sure this entire committee understands that. And it is an unbelievable service to the people of the state of Maine that these folks are putting in this amount of time and energy and effort. And that goes for you, yourself and your staff at the top level as well. So I don't want to say that the question was meant to be like, you're not doing enough, you need to get more. I'm just looking for ways that we can get more access for the people calling in who are reaching a point of desperation right now, but without doing it in such a way that it's going to, break the people who are trying to man these phones. I've worked shutdowns of 712s, and 712s will ruin your spirit. And you have folks that are working that long and have been working that long for a while. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, thank you.
Representative Carney and then Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, thank you, Commissioner Fortman. I have one follow-up first on Representative Cuddy's question. Is there a specific day of the week or time of day that it's particularly advantageous for people to check? For example, do people's accounts get populated with notices at, say, 9 o'clock in the morning or something like that?
That's a really good question, Representative, and I do not know the answer to that. Kim, Deputy Smith, do you know the answer? I want to say most correspondence happens at night.
Yes, that is correct. Most of the updates to the system happen through an overnight processing, and then the information would be populated in the claimant's account. I also did want to point out that we will be sending emails. So as changes are made to people who haven't been eligible for state unemployment, as we're rolling them over to PUA, we also will be sending them an email.
Great, thank you. And then a slightly different subject matter. So at some point, there are going to be folks that are applying for the extended benefits and the pandemic emergency unemployment compensation. And again, I want to emphasize that once folks reach the department staff, they have received the highest quality of service, and we're all grateful for the work that you're doing. In the transition that some claimants are going to be making to these new benefits programs, have you given thoughts to how we can accomplish that change without them having to access an individual person? Are there ways that we can even further streamline the process? For example, some of the guides and instructional suggestions that we were discussing earlier with regard to the PUA.
Yeah, and I don't know, Kim, if you want to talk about this a little, but these are the conversations that we're having now.
Sure. So the folks who have exhausted their state unemployment, that's the next biggest group to work with, and they're impacted by PUA, by the state extended benefits, and by the PEUC, and that we're trying to figure out how we can smoothly move them into whichever program they're eligible for. I think initially it will be PUA, and then depending on how soon we trigger on to state extended benefits here in Maine, we would either move them from PUA to PEUC or state extended benefits. And it's our hope to do that automatically, but we're still trying to figure out exactly how that will work.
Okay, and then just one quick follow-up. We communicate a lot with our constituents through weekly newsletters and other formats, and if there are simple notices or graphics that you can provide to us, perhaps you can enlist our help in getting the word out to people to make that transition as smooth as possible.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you.
Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In follow-up to Representative Cuddy's concerns about the phone system, I think most of the complaints I get, are for people waiting and then getting hung up on. So I would just like to urge the either sort of a queue system or an automated response to give that a very high priority. Now, having said that, there's another issue regarding fact-finding. I thought we were going to go in around, and I'd have a chance to ask that earlier, but I'll ask it now. Anyway, for the self-employed, or not necessarily fact-finding, but for the self-employed, what type of criteria do you need to determine that they are indeed self-employed? Is there sort of is there a copy of an IRS return or a Maine income tax return? And how do you verify that?
So Representative Bradstreet, thank you for that question. And it's actually a two-step process. The first step is on the application. The person does a self-attestation and they tell us that they're self-employed, and that is part of the guidance that we received from the U.S. Department of Labor, that is sufficient to begin the process. We are also in Maine going to be doing a two-step process. So for the self-employed, they're being paid 1/2 of the average weekly benefits. So that is $172 plus the $600 in pandemic unemployment assistance. And then later this month, we will be, again, as Deputy Smith said, we're communicating with people through email primarily. We will be emailing folks and asking them for copies of their tax documents and uploading those and doing the system verification that way. If the information that they provide, and we'll do redeterminations. So if the information that they provide demonstrates that they are in fact eligible for more than that $172, we will retroactively pay those benefits.
Okay, follow up. Yes, regarding that and some other issues as well, some of that information is going to be fairly confidential, I would think, to the people. And is it true that in certain instances, anybody receiving that information or other information and doing fact-finding has to be a civil servant, designated person?
Merit staff in terms of determinations. I know Deputy Smith, do you want to talk about this at all?
Yeah, it is a federal requirement that anybody who makes a decision on an unemployment case, be it at the adjudication level or at the appeals level, be a merit staff employee. And right now that means we have state employees performing that function. We have not talked about contracting that out at all to somebody. We've had some organizations say they follow a merit-based process, but we are not considering contracting that out at this point. That's part of the 138 positions that we added with folks to be able to do that work.
So we're going to, Senator Guerin and Representative Sylvester each have a question. We'll start with Senator Guerin and then Representative Sylvester, and then we're going to take a break at 3:30 just for no more than 10 minutes. I'd ask people to try for 5 because live streaming breaks are not great for that, but I also recognize that I received a number of requests from committee members for a very brief break at 3:30. So Senator Guerin, you have a question, and then Representative Sylvester, and then a very brief break for purposes of people being able to take a moment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As my colleagues have said, the constituents that are contacting me, hundreds of them, busy, call back later, drop call, no callbacks. The Google system that I talked to you about earlier, when I was on that call with the Google executives, they said their system pulls the calls into the cloud, organizes them, and sends them back to a call center. There are no call fails or drop calls. And if anyone from the department had returned Google's calls or their repeated contacts, you could have learned that. They use the state's mainframe and keep that in place, and it creates an add-on that manages calls and data using the old system, the current system that we're using now. It adds on to that. So I really implore you to get in touch with them and see what they could do. The cost of this program, they said, would be about $1 million. The legislature gave the governor $11 million to work on these systems and help with this pandemic, and none of that has been spent. The 25 million coming from the federal government, $1,000 seems like a really small amount of money to be putting to get people a check that have been without money for 7 weeks. As one of the people that contacted me, and those of you who know me, this isn't normally my kind of language, but they said, what is the plan to answer the damn phone? And you know, I feel their frustration. What is the plan?
So thank you, Senator. I also feel their frustration, and I believe that we laid out the plan that we had. I believe that we are going to continue to try to staff up. And as I said, when this started, we were answering about 300 calls a day, and we're now at about 1,800 calls a day, and we will continue to improve that. I'm happy to look at whatever it is that Google is offering. You did talk about tying to the mainframe. I just think that from what I've heard, the services that they're offering are very different to states that have very different systems than we do. But I'm happy to look at it.
Representative Sylvester, you have the last question, and then we're going to take a very brief break. I know there are members of the public who are following along because they have questions that haven't been answered yet. But yeah, Representative Sylvester.
You missed all the very wise things I just said. The jokes, the anecdotes. I just wanted to end with the question I think that all Maine people are asking, which is that you've announced today, which is great, that there's going to be 138 new people, and is that the level that you believe is required in order to clear the backlog and to be able to keep up with new claims? Is that the number, 138, that you think we need? Is that?
That is the number that we're putting out there. And Representative, what I would also want to say is that I'm hoping by the end of the week to be able to provide additional information about the backlog, because cases are being cleared and people are receiving benefits that are fairly significant.
We would certainly appreciate that, and and I know that there's a lot of state workers from other departments that feel they have skills, and so I know you're looking in all avenues, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The committee will be at ease. The chairs and leads will return to this room no later than 3:35, please. So that'll give everybody 8 minutes. So we'll resume at 3:35. noticed that some states started processing pandemic unemployment assistance earlier than Maine did. Can you elaborate on that and what barriers existed to us rolling that out?
So, Senator Bellows, I think I touched on this in my statement, but basically last week there were about 17 states or so that rolled out pandemic unemployment assistance. And along with us, I think Maine was approximately in the middle of the pack when we began either the federal pandemic unemployment assistance program, federal pandemic compensation program, as well as the pandemic unemployment assistance. We really wanted to make sure that when we did it, we would be able to pick up as many people as possible, not just focus on self-employed, that the pandemic unemployment assistance program was really designed to allow people who traditionally are not covered by unemployment assistance to receive benefits during this crisis. So that's people who are self-employed, people who are not monetarily eligible, people who were new entrants to the workforce. And we wanted to make sure that when we rolled it out, we were able to not just accept applications, which we know many states did, but also begin paying benefits.
So let's talk a little bit about, thank you for that explanation. We really appreciate, hearing that the $0 eligibility is actually good news, that if they get a message saying that they have zero benefits, it's an important first step in getting their benefits. What about constituents who received messages saying that they were ineligible until date uncertain, until 9,999? Do you have any information about those types of messages that people received? That they were disqualified from the date that they filed to out into the future until the year 9,999.
So Deputy Commissioner, you want to take this one?
Sure. This is Kim Smith. Usually when we see that, it's because someone has filed claims in the past through the Bureau and been disqualified and found to have fraud. And so that is usually why you see a 2099 expiration date, because they are indefinitely disqualified. They do have their recourse is to send a letter to the Commissioner's office and request that indefinite disqualification be lifted.
The other thing, Senator Bellows, is that pandemic unemployment assistance will pick up people who have been disqualified from state unemployment insurance. So that is one of the issues that we're looking at there as well, whether they would be covered under pandemic unemployment assistance.
Okay. The two individuals, I know one of them personally, and I'm almost certain that they've never had a fraudulent claim. So thank you for that explanation. I'll instruct them to follow up with a letter to the Commissioner's office for that. Similarly, a state representative who filed for unemployment herself had showed some screenshots that I shared on my Facebook page as well, where it looked like people had to answer yes in one spot and no in another in questions about unemployment. Has that been resolved? Can you elaborate on why it seemed that if you answered that you were self-employed, that it took you down a bit of a rabbit hole into other questions that get you off of the application?
So I believe, and thank you, Senator, I believe that the question is, if you answer, are you self-employed in one spot, then there's another question that says, can you name an employer that you've worked for in the last 18 months? If someone tried inserting either their own name in that spot That would raise questions about whether or not they were in fact self-employed, because the system starts looking for W-2 wages. So again, this system is designed. We're building on our existing unemployment insurance system. We made that deliberate decision in order to streamline, because you have to constantly check. If you're eligible for state unemployment insurance, you are not eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. So by using the same system, you can verify those, whether or not there are W-2 wages that might make someone eligible for state unemployment, and immediately act on that. So if the person said, I'm self-employed, I haven't worked for any other employer, they'll go down one path. But if they say, I'm self-employed and list an employer, the system starts looking for those wages to verify that. And that's what hangs people up.
I also understand that there's a hang up on the able and available form where it asks if you're self-employed, that people were told that they should list no there. No? We'll follow up with screenshots for you.
Yeah. Without seeing it, it's hard to comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Representative Marshall, Representative Morris has a question, and he has not yet asked a question in today's hearing. So Representative Morris, and then Representative Rikerson, and go ahead. And then Representative Dorr. So Representative Morris, you can activate your mic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here, Commissioner Fortman. My question has to do with, obviously, the phone systems. It was about 6 weeks ago that we authorized the bill dealing with the COVID-19. I guess with the issues that you're having with the phone systems, I'm curious how often you're in contact with the governor, and if you've relayed the issues to her, and how those conversations have gone.
Thank you, Representative Morris. Yes, the governor is well aware of the challenges that we've had with the phone, and has directed every member of the cabinet to help me in any way possible. Been working closely, as I had said earlier, with Commissioner Figueroa and her staff at the Office of Information Technology. Her staff worked round the clock for 3 straight days to help resolve some of the issues. They are on high alert. Anytime we have a system failure with the phones, we are a top priority for all of the OIT staff.
Okay. And just to follow up on the issue with, you spoke in your opening remarks about opening up communications with legislatures. I know I tried to call the liaison a couple of weeks ago because I was having issues with a constituent and I never got a call back. So I guess, and I know the governor said last week they were hoping to have appoint a contact person, because at least for me, I not only get contacted by my constituents, I'm also contacted by other legislators who know I'm on the Labor Committee to see if I have any more information. So when is this system, you said hopefully Friday, when is the system going to be rolled out, and what is it going to look like? What issues are you considering?
So, one of the things that I'm looking for, and again, thank you for the question and your patience. I can only imagine how frustrating it is on your side of this exchange. I know how incredibly frustrating it is on mine as well. We all want to resolve these issues. I would say that we will have something in place by Friday. I'm hoping to hear from all of you about what would also meet your needs.
Okay, thank you.
So just to follow up on Representative Morris, he's absolutely right. What has worked well in the past is having at least one, perhaps a dedicated team of 3 dedicated constituent service representatives who can respond to legislator concerns, because I think we play an important role in amassing complaints and concerns. And so, and as elected representatives, we play a really important role in representing the people. So if there's anything that can be done to elevate that, I think particularly for members of the Labor Committee, we are doing our best. We are reading everything on the website. We are posting every day. We are communicating as clearly as we can with your department, and we are so grateful for the communications that you have made. But constituent services is something that the prior administration did very well, and I hope that it's something that we can restore because it makes a big difference. And I'm not getting people who are locked out because of password problems. And if they send me that email, I can send it to the Career Center because the Career Center is doing a great job on that. The types of problems that we're getting are really big systems issues. You know, people who filed on March 17th and still haven't received benefits because there's something wrong. Those are the types of thornier issues that we're getting. So I really hope we can resolve that. Representative Rikerson, Representative Carney, and then Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did want to commend the department on the prompt action I got for about a blind constituent unable to access. That was it was great. It was prompt. It worked. But I have 2 other questions, if I may, Madam Chair. One is about the seasonal workers. Because they can't come to Maine without quarantining, are they somehow captured in maybe in the PUA or some other aspect?
So that's an interesting question, Representative, and it's one that we haven't had a conversation about. Can you give me a little bit more information? Are you saying that they've come to Maine to work, but they're quarantined?
Well, no, I have, for instance, constituents who travel around the country for agricultural work. Mm-hmm. So obviously during the summer there's berries and there's in the fall apples, that kind of thing. So I'm wondering about since they're limited in their ability to get here because they have to not work for 2 weeks. Is there any way they can capture some benefits?
Yeah, so I really don't know the answer. Let me think about it and get back to you.
Okay. Well, that's good for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Carney, then Representative Dorr, then Representative Cuddy, and then Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Fortman, could you please give us a little information about retroactivity and how folks who maybe were eligible for PUA during, say, the month of April, but who maybe returned to work in early May, how will those claims for retroactive benefits be handled? And is there something that we can do to help our constituents and people throughout the state make sure that they get those retroactive benefits if they're entitled to them?
Sure. So thank you, Representative Carney. When they're filling out the PUA claim, they put the date in there that they were impacted by COVID-19. So the day of the layoff or the reason for separation, they use that date, and we are automatically populating it with the dates that they would have been eligible if they have been filing their weekly certification. So it's an automatic reach back for them. And then when they go back to work, if they're working full time on their weekly certification, they would be putting their wages and they would no longer be eligible for unemployment benefits. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And then, so if they go back to work and they're maybe only working part-time, then for example, they would continue to file the weekly and maybe would be entitled to a little bit of retroactive benefits as well.
They should be, if they were out of work, if they were out of work anytime, they are eligible for retroactive benefits.
Great.
So it's, and then moving forward, and we do have and I think it's a YouTube little video explaining how to calculate your unemployment benefit if you're earning partial wages. It talks about the maximum weekly benefit of $445. If you're earning more than $5 more than that, then you would not be eligible for benefits during that week.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, I'm going to just follow up for 1 minute. That's a really great point. A lot of Mainers don't know, because a lot of states don't have. Maine has partial unemployment. Can you explain what partial unemployment is and how much a person can make and still keep filing for unemployment if they're working reduced hours? I know, for example, many of the stylists at hair salons are back to work but part-time, or some of the restaurants that are doing only takeout. The restaurant workers are back to work but at reduced hours. Can you talk about partial unemployment and eligibility for that?
Sure, and I'll do a top line overview, but Deputy Commissioner Smith is much better at explaining this than I am. But each person has their maximum weekly benefit, and it could vary. The lowest is $77. The maximum benefit is $445. You are allowed to earn no more than $5 over whatever your maximum weekly benefit is. And then there's a $100 offset as well. But Deputy Commissioner Smith, do you want to walk through this? Because you are much clearer than I am in explaining this.
Sure, I'd be happy to. As the commissioner said, first off, always file your weekly certification. That is step number one after your application has gone through. That weekly certification is what triggers your benefit payment. So make sure that you do that. It can be done anytime, Sunday through Saturday for the week prior. And one of the questions on that weekly certification is, did you work or earn any wages during that week? So you would, yes or no, depending on what you did for the week. So if you had earnings, let's say that you are at the maximum $445 and you earned $300 for the week. We would disregard $100 of that. So really, we're only looking at $200 worth of your earnings. If your maximum benefit is $445, you would get a reduction of $200. That's the $300 minus the $100 disregard. So you would get $445 minus $200, which is $245. So you have your earnings of $300 for the week and your unemployment benefit of $245 for that week.
Representative Carney, yep, that's very helpful. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. Representative Carney, do you have any follow-up questions?
I did. Thank you very much. Just a follow-up question, given that lots of new folks that are applying for these benefits may not be aware of A, partial benefit availability, and B, retroactivity. Is there any outreach that the Bureau is going to be doing to Mainers to make sure that people are aware that they may be able to use for those types of benefits?
I think, Representative Carney, what we've been doing is we've been talking to every trade group, association, put out press releases, put things up on the website. The partial earnings piece I thought was particularly complicated, so we had an animated video done to put that information out there. We're open to other suggestions, but basically we've been talking to anyone who wants to talk to us and push out information as far and wide as we can.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's another one of those things that we can promote among our constituents as well by letting them know about those benefits. Thank you.
So just as a reminder to committee members who entered the room late, we're talking about benefits largely right now. And I know Representative Dorr has some questions about benefits, and I saw that Representative Cuddy would like to enter the queue, and I know Senator Guerin would like to enter the queue. So Representative Dorr, you're on. And just as a reminder for those who are in Teams, you really do have to speak into your computer. We have some microphone issues that have developed a little later in the afternoon.
Thank you, Senator Bellows. My question is, how many people who actually filed in the first week still have not received any benefits?
So Representative Doerr's question is how many people who filed in the first week? So that's the week of, I want to say March 15th. We actually pulled that information last night, and I believe the number is 19. But Deputy Commissioner, do you want to, can you verify that for me? I don't have the form in front of me.
From that first week, we have 19 people who have not yet received a determination from us. I don't have in front of me how many people from that week were denied. I'm sure that some of the folks that applied that week were either self-employed people or people who were not monetarily eligible and received a denial, and those folks should be rolling into PUA this week. But there are 19 people from that first week that have not received a determination.
Thank you. I expected that it was going to be a lot more, so 19 is not good for the 19 people, but a lot lower than I had expected. The next question I have, what is the process and wait time for employees that are trying to verify information?
So I'm not sure I understand the question, Representative Dorr. Verify what?
Well, don't employees have to verify that employees were employed with them in order for the employees to get benefits? Yes.
Got it. So that's why typically under unemployment insurance, there's a 10 to 14 day turnaround time, so that that's built into the system. Because of the incredible volume, we're trying to streamline that process as well. Typically what happens is it's an employer, and then they have to provide what we call a B1, which is just the name of the form for each individual employee. That is incredibly burdensome if you have a large employer with, hundreds of employees. So we have worked with those employers, if they contact us ahead of time, and developed a spreadsheet so that they can provide the information to us on that rather than 100 separate pieces of information.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set. Yes.
Great. Representative Cuddy, and then Representative Guerin, and I saw Representative Bradstreet as well. Representative Cuddy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. So the question that I wanted to ask, I actually wanted to step back to staffing for just a moment. You have the new 138 people you're talking about bringing on in the next several weeks. And I'm very happy to hear that. And I'm sure that the people who are on the phones now and are doing the work right now are happy to hear that there's more help on the way. But why has it taken until this point to make the decision to bring these folks on? Or how long has this been in the works, I guess, to bring these folks on?
Yeah, Representative Cuddy, that's a great question. It's not so much that it's taken us so long to make that decision. The decision to hire the call center was done because we recognized that we would not be able to do the creation of the positions and all of the hiring in a timely manner. So that was essential to get people here, get them on the phones, and get people their service. I think the Deputy Commissioner can walk through the steps of what we need to do in order to hire employees and what that process looked like. And part of it gets back to what I had said earlier about if you don't have vacant positions to start from, you're creating positions. So Deputy Commissioner, you want to walk